little something here for you. Oh, baby, baby. Put on my Britney Spears CD. Alright. Why invest? Are you looking to supplement your income or fund your living expenses so you can add more to your monthly budget? Are you trying to generate enough income for a down payment on a home, as Bashir was? Or are you seeking to build a nest egg over the next couple of years because the idea of your Social Security running out doesn't align with the future you envision? Or is it D, all the above? Determining why you want to invest will, in the long run, enable you to decide upon the most effective instrument, strategies, and approaches. 1. Short-term goals. Whether it is a car, vacation, or wedding, this goal can be accomplished in 2 years or less. Investment strategies with a quick turnaround are optimal. Medium-term goals. Saving for a down payment or enough to send your child to college, or even storing up enough to start a small business, will take time, depending on your financial situation and the price of what you're saving up for. You may be looking at 3 to 6 years. When considering investments, you don't want anything that will tie your money up beyond that time. When it comes to saving your retirement, building generational wealth, or achieving financial freedom and independence, slow and steady wins the race. Investments that will take 7 years or longer to fully mature and turn significant profits are what should interest you the most. Aisha, a 38-year-old earning $45,000 a year, wanted to go to Essence Festival with her girls for her 40th birthday. To make it to the ultimate girls trip and birthday weekend, she was hoping for floor seats to all the concerts, VIP passes, and a suite in one of the New Orleans luxury hotels. With its price tag close to $6,000, Aisha needed a serious strategy. To make it happen, she cut back on eating out, began working for DoorDash and Instacart. That created an additional $500 per month. She set up automatic transfers to invest $300 a month into a brokerage account split between an S&P 500 index fund and a travel stock fund. The other $200 went into a high-yield savings account for spending money on the trip. By starting with $2,000 and staying disciplined, she saw her investments grow to up to $10,000 by the time she needed to book her travel. That was more than enough for Aisha's Essence Festival. And remainder, she established a travel fund and began planning to take a major trip every 2 years. Even though Bashir's decision to invest in the food truck happened sooner than he expected, he was in alignment with his medium-term goals. Whether he decides to invest in the food truck or take advantage of another investment opportunity, he accomplished his initial goal. That gave him the data and information he needs to reevaluate other opportunities based on his previous performance and what he is and isn't willing to risk the next time around. When it comes to saving for the long haul, one person might start by automatically investing 10% of their salary into a diversified retirement fund, watching it grow over decades through employer matches and market gains, eventually allowing for an early retirement. Another family might invest in a balanced mix of stocks and real estate, inching closer to financial freedom every year as their financial cushion grows. There are optimal scenarios that will make investing a much more comfortable risk than others. Number 1 being money. Your investing can be done without it. Yet investing can be done without it. Yeah. Now with a little as $1, people can be able to enter into the market and can begin building their portfolio. So the question on whether you are ready to invest doesn't come down solely to your available resources and the financial runaway. You might make it happen. Ultimately, it boils down to whether you are ready to do what it takes to get started. So much has changed in recent years. At one time, investors could only go to a traditional brokerage to buy stocks. Now you can use robo-advisors, online financial planning tools powered by algorithms, and various investment apps such as Robinhood, E-Trade, Acorn, Stash, and Coinbase. Shouting at you niggas. These apps provide the best of traditional investment strategies and marry them with the technology and convince that all of us have come to enjoy, and convenience all of us have come to enjoy, making building wealth much easier than before. In addition to deciding what kind of investor you want to be, you'll need to take some time to decide how you will establish your investment portfolio. This process, which is known as asset allocation, is crucial because it is the most strategic and effective way to reach your financial goals. This is where you look at your goals and the time frame in which you want to meet them and match with the asset class that works best. Creating the right formula for you will take some effort. Financial advisors say that there's no perfect asset allocation strategy, and while that may be true, in the next chapter we will outline asset allocation models that worked well for members of the EYL community. That's Earn Your Leisure, right? It's a podcast. I want you to go check that out, right? That's those guys who are on that podcast wrote this book. Depending on your goals and what you have to work with, your investing timeline to achievement will differ, and there are a number of factors to be considered. In her work as a financial therapist and coach, Barbara Hudson offers that wealth has 4 stages: survival, stability, wealth, affluence. Using our EYL players, we will work through Hudson's definition of each. Survival. Financial survival includes living paycheck to paycheck, chronic inability to pay bills on time, and a consistent lack of enough money to cover your basic necessities and desires. Survival mode is also marked by financial trauma, insecurity, inferior thinking. Tracy, Dre, and Edwin would be considered as living in financial survival mode. None of them have enough money to cover their current expenses, and they often find themselves either scrambling at the end of the month or accepting that they won't have enough to pay their bills. Stability. Financial stability is marked by steady income, healthy credit, and the ability to pay your bills in full and on time. Whether you are paying rent or mortgage, you can comfortably afford it. Your savings are robust and can cover emergency and infrequent expenses without throwing your budget into tailspin. Corey and the Williams family fall into this category. If this is your situation, you're likely finally stable enough to begin investing if you can meet these basic criteria. You've established enough emergency fund, or are 85% to 90% there. You have a solid retirement plan. You're able to fully reconcile your monthly budget and have money left over at the end of each month. At this stage, you've outgrown suffering from constant fear to worry over your account balances and are in a position to spend your time focused on things that people that matter most. Currently, none of our EYL players are in this stage, but this is why they and you are here. Affluence. An affluent person has the ability to leverage their wealth for things beyond money, like influence and power. This doesn't necessarily mean you're a billionaire with an absurd amount of money. In Black and brown communities, people who would be considered simply wealthy elsewhere can be deemed to be affluent depending on how they use and express their wealth. Aisha would be considered to be in survival mode, while Bashir is squarely in the financial stability stage. The food truck investment opportunity opened up a world of possibilities for him, and he could begin to explore other wealth-building strategies where available. With this investment, Bashir's final portfolio wasn't just his teacher's salary and pension anymore. He had a chance to create the kind of economic stability and streams of income he had thought were available only to other people. And as he surveyed the wealth-building landscape, he quickly learned what was and wasn't for him. What about debt? Having debt can make it difficult to invest. but it is not impossible to do so. What matters is the kind of debt you have. All right, here we go. High interest debt. Anything with an interest rate over 10% falls into this category, which typically includes credit cards and installment payments on things like furniture. In most instances, you want to pay this down as much as possible before investing. Low interest debt. Personal loans, car loans, lines of credit are considered low interest. Investing while having these outstanding balances is more ideal, as with proper budgeting, you have more disposable income than those with high interest debt do. Sorry, y'all. Tax deduction debt. Think student loans, business and investment loans, and mortgages. This is the best kind of debt to have. As it's generally also low interest, you can easily build an investment portfolio while you chip away at it. One possible strategy as you pay down the debt is to use the money to save an interest to begin investing. All right, so use the money you save on interest to begin investing. Most people assume that they have to completely eliminate their debt before they can start. But by doing that takes time and money. That might be better directed towards your investing efforts. Think of it like this. You want to give your money as much time as possible to mature. And make more of itself. As long as you're not carrying high interest debt and you're making on-time payments and paying down as much as you can work with the plan. A common initial strategy is to tackle debt with the steepest interest first and then start directing the same monthly payment amount into investments. When Peter and Yolanda got married, their joint credit rating was horrible. Neither of them believed that they had enough breathing room to dream and create long-term goals. All they knew was that they wanted to start a family eventually and couldn't do it with all their debt. The couple gave themselves 5 years to eliminate the high interest debt, which was the bulk, and what they owed, and make significant dent in their student loans. Though both of them had jobs, their checks were already stretched to the max. There was no wiggle room. They took a huge risk, dipping into their 401k and taking out just enough to place into a high-yield savings account, a CD, and a credit rebuilding savings account that reported their monthly payments to the credit bureaus. Between the two of them, they invested $10,000 across these three options, agreed not to touch any of the money for the first 4 years. With interest rates at 5 to 6%, their investment garnered an additional $2,000 and a high credit score. They put them into a better position to refinance their loans, turn the tide on their financial future. They were able to take some of the $2,000 and invest it into the stock market, thus taking another step towards creating the kind of freedom and general wealth that will make life easier for the children they were growing more confident that they would be able to afford. You've got options. Now let's cover the basics of the various investment classes and the risks associated with each before some of the more standard and proven types. So when you purchase stocks, you are investing in a company. Through the stock, you are buying a share of or a predetermined portion of the company's profits and assets. A stock can pay an investor in two ways. Its value can rise, and the investor can sell it for a profit, or it can pay dividends, which are periodic distributions of the company's earnings. Whether through profit-taking or dividend payments, stocks can be used for long-term wealth building to generate income to add to your current budget. Investing in the stock market is especially helpful if you have a goal such as retiring comfortably or funding a major purchase, something that requires long-term rather than short-term investing. There are 11 market sectors. Communication services. Companies like Disney, Meta, that are entertainment, telecommunications, and media companies that produce content, provide social media platforms. Disney and Meta, sorry. Consumer discretionary. Companies like Amazon and Ford that produce goods, cars, and clothing, and include restaurants and hotels. So that was customer discretionary. Consumer staples. Companies like Walmart, Procter and Gamble that produce and sell food, drinks, and household items. Consumer staples. Energy. Companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil that are engaged in the production of oil and gas. Energy. Financials. Companies like Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Chase that are banks, investments, and mortgage firms and insurance companies. Financials. Health companies like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer that create and provide healthcare equipment, services, and technology and engage in biotech, pharmaceutical, and development. Health. Industries. Companies like Delta, C.L.i.M. that manufacture construction and electrical equipment and aerospace and defense equipment and includes security, employment, professional services companies, industrials. Information technology. Companies like Apple, Microsoft that produce and manufacture software, its products, communications, equipment, phones, and computers. Information technology. Materials. Companies like Sherwin-Williams, Dow that produce glass, paper, metals, and steel. Materials. Real estate. Companies like C.L.i.m.B Property Group, Public Storage that develop and sell raw estate properties, and REITs. Rates. Rate. Okay, that was real estate. Utilities. Companies like Duke Energy, PSEG that provide electrical, gas, and water. Utilities. It's important to note. Here, I'll go back in. So that was communication services, consumer discretionary, customer staples, energy, financials, health, industrials, information technology, materials, real estate, utilities. It's important to note that stocks often have the highest risk of any investment. A company can lose value or go out of business, leaving its investors with little to no return on their investment. The unpredictability of the market can create potential for high returns, but there is a greater risk of losing money, especially in the short term. For beginners, an effective and inexpensive way to enter the stock market is to invest in a low-cost index fund that tracks the broader market before beginning to pick individual stocks. For example, an S&P 500 index fund tracks the movements of the top 500 companies in the country. While you can start investing with a small amount of money, investing between $500 and $1,000 can help you diversify properly. Equities. Any equity is a stake in a company, whether a stock or purchase option from the company itself. While some use the word equity interchangeably with stock, they're not necessarily the same. Every share in a stock is a kind of equity, but not all equities are shares. Depending on how it is structured, equity in a company can offer the investor more than just proper shares. Equity could also give an investor a voice and voting power within the company, and the value of the company increases. The investor is able to either make more money through profit shares or sell the equities at a higher price. There are two kinds of company equity. Public equity, in which investors refer to purchasing shares of a company that are listed on a stock exchange, whereas private equity investor means investing in a company that isn't listed. While private equity investing may seem more appealing because of exclusivity, it often requires being an accredited investor with a high net worth. The exclusive nature of private equity investments make them available only to select groups of investors. Private equity investing often requires tying up capital for several years. Overall, private equity investments create the opportunity for oversized returns if the company grows rapidly or goes public. Essentially, an oversized return occurs when you invest in a company for less than what its Invest in a company for less than what it's worth, and the company experiences a financial boom. But there is also the risk that the company will fail and all of your investments will be lost. When it comes to equity investments, you should focus on building wealth through your public equities first before exploring private equities. All right. Purchasing a bond from a government or a company means that it has your permission to borrow your money and pay you back with interest. A bond is a fixed income instrument with interest being paid periodically and principal paid back when the bond reaches maturity. Though there are several types of bonds, here are four of the most common types. Corporate bonds. These help fund a corporation's operations and expenses, and the investor receives regular interest payments. An investor risks ultimately depend on the company's creditworthiness, the rate of the inflation, and overall state of the economy. Corporate bonds are more stable than stocks, as bondholders are more likely to receive a portion of the initial investment back if a corporation is liquidated or goes bankrupt. Municipal bonds. These are sold by civil governments to improve the city's infrastructure because municipal bonds are an investment in the public's well-being. They are considered to be a safe investment and receive a tax break, no federal tax, and various state of local exemptions. On the earned interest, municipal bonds start at a minimum of $5,000, yielding much higher returns and carrying a greater risk than government bonds. Government bonds. These are sold to carry out government functions such as printing money, funding budgets, paying down debt. U.S. government and agency bonds are considered one of the safest investments, carrying the full faith and credit assurance of the government, which is the citizens. This means that regardless of the country's condition, including war and economic stability, the government will always pay its shareholders of the various bond types. Government bonds carry the lowest risk. So there you go. Government bonds. I'm going to read that one again. These are sold to carry out government functions. Okay. I'm going to go back one even more. Municipal bonds. These are sold by city governments to improve the city's infrastructure because municipal bonds are an investment in the public's well-being. Well, who ensures the public's well-being? That would be the courts and the police. So a municipal bond, and it says municipal bonds start at a minimum of $5,000. Sounds like the average bond amount put on people held in custody. All right. The other one that's probably important is those government bonds. These are sold to carry out government functions such as printing money, funding budgets, and paying down debt. U.S. government and agency bonds are considered one of the safest investments, carrying the full faith and credit assurance of the government. So what ensures full faith and credit of the government? The people. Your birth certificate. Directly tied to the intrinsic work of the people. Because when you make that money as a regulated citizen, you pay tax. And if you ain't paying taxes, that's how they come after you. So you use that money to assure some to pay up that bond. I'm not saying I know how it works, but shoot. They take that tax money to back that bond. Or to collect on it. International bonds. These enable you to invest in countries other than the United States. Much like corporate bonds, international bonds have varying interest rates and maturity dates and depend on the credit worthiness of the country. Due to a lack of international bond regulation, these bonds are significantly riskier than other types of bonds. You are more likely not to have the full scope of information available to make an informed decision. The political and economic instability of a country affects the risk level of that country's bonds and the likelihood of the country to default. Bonds provide a steady income and can stabilize an investor's portfolio, making them a good fit for conservative investors. Additionally, for those in the EYL community, earn your leisure, who are older and never are nearing retirement, bonds are a wise investment choice. But those who are interested in bonds consider using mutual funds or ETFs for easy diversification. For those with a short-term goal, such as purchasing a home within 5 to 10 years, bonds are an optimal way to preserve capital. Mutual funds. Mutual funds enable you to purchase multiple investments at one time and are a great way for beginners to start. This is a group investment. This is a group of investments that you can buy into, allowing a fund manager to manage your investment after paying an annual fee to invest. You're paid either through dividends or interest, depending on the type of investment. And if you don't have a lot of money to pay with or are still leery of investments, you might want to consider purchasing a fractional share of a stock or mutual fund. This will give you the opportunity to begin building a diverse portfolio without sinking everything you have into one investment. In the past, people have to wait until they saved enough money to buy a full share. This is not only took a lot of time, but decreased the number of people who could access the wealth building resource. All right, there are several mutual funds. Equity mutual funds. These purchase stocks for various public traded companies. These funds have a higher potential for growth, but greater risk as the fund grows. Equity mutual funds are optimal for younger investors, and they have more time to navigate instability in the market. Bond funds. These pay investors a fixed amount back on the initial investment. These funds invest in the government and corporate debt and have less potential for growth than equity funds. Investors who are closer to retirement should have more bond funds than equity funds in their portfolio. This will allow them to protect their earnings while accruing more interest than a bank savings account pays. Bond funds accrue more interest than a bank savings account. Money market mutual funds. These invest in high-quality short-term debts of the government, banks, or corporations. They are optimal for short-term goals and are essentially beneficial for those who are looking to fund their emergency savings. Money market mutual funds, which pay out monthly, are considered one of the safest overall investments and constitute 50% of the mutual fund market. Balanced funds. These are a combination of equity and fixed income funds with a set ratio of investments. The most common division is 60% stocks and 40% bonds. These funds reallocate the ratio of investments from equities to bonds when the investor is closer to retirement. Mutual funds are categorized as index or active managed. Index funds are mutual funds whose holdings track a specific market index, such as the S&P 500. These funds have become increasingly popular as they typically yield better returns than other funds do. Actively managed funds use managers and finance professionals to outperform the market. Good Lord, to try and outperform the market. While actively managed funds have higher fees than index funds do, their managers and professionals work extremely hard with the funds to ensure that they cover their fees and expenses. Speaking of fees, pay close attention to them, as they can eat into your profits and returns. Mutual funds are for people who might be nervous about stocks and bonds to invest in, and they are optimal for savings for goals such as college or retirement. When you want to set it and forget it. Use balanced funds. ETFs, exchange traded funds, are combined investment securities that are bought and sold like individual stocks. ETFs can be structured to track everything from commodity prices to other securities and investment strategies. The oldest ETFs are the Spider S&P 500, tracks the S&P 500 index. There are several kinds of exchange traded funds. Actively managed ETFs utilize portfolio managers to make decisions about the securities that will compromise the portfolio. Bond ETFs provide income to investors based on the performance of those bonds. Unlike bonds themselves, bonds ETFs have no maturity date. Commodity ETFs invest in commodities and are cheaper than physically owning various commodities. Current ETFs track the performance of domestic and foreign currencies. These ETFs often used to consider the stability of a country's currency based on political and economic developments in a country. Passive ETFs replace the performance of indexes like the S&P 500 or more targeted sectors. Sector ETFs concentrate in specific market sectors and industries. Stock ETFs are a combination of stocks that track specific industries or sectors, including high performance and emerging stocks with growth potential. Unlike stock mutual funds, these ETFs cost significantly less and don't require security ownership. ETFs are great for the beginning investor and those who don't have a lot of money to invest or a lot of the time to research different investments. If you've been in the investment game for a while, an ETF is always a great way to become exposed to another sector at a low cost, also meaning lower risk. Fixed deposit. A fixed deposit occurs when an investor deposits a set amount of money into a bank or corporate entity for a set time, with the expectation of a certain return. Banks and companies differ on whether they invest your fixed deposit in a security market in order to yield a return, but the investors who makes the deposit agrees to receive a set interest rate. The maturity is set by the institution. It can range from 7 to 10 years. When it comes to this type of investment, it's important for the investor to be committed for the long haul. Early withdrawal from most corporate fixed deposits isn't possible. Banks allow early withdrawal with a significant penalty fee, which can often defeat the purpose of the investment. Real estate. Many people look to investing in real estate as one of the most popular and profitable opportunities. It creates the potential for steady income and long-term asset appreciation. While Teddy and Brianna were planning their wedding, they were also deciding where they plan to live. Both of them had purchased their homes long before they had met and weren't necessarily interested in selling. They decided to use one of their homes as a rental property to generate additional income and create the sustainable wealth that would help them start a family. Because their homes were approximately the same size, it boiled down to their doing the research to find out whose neighborhood would yield a more positive return. This meant as they were selecting flowers and wedding cake flavors, they were also learning about current housing market values and other essential factors. They wanted to live happily ever after with as much money in their pockets as possible. There are several ways to invest in real estate, including Real Estate Investment Trust, REITs. We said that earlier. These enable you to invest in real estate without purchasing physical real estate. REITs are companies that own commercial real estate and pay dividends to investors. Some REITs trade on a stock exchange while others do not. Non-traded REITs tend to be harder to value than publicly traded ones are. Sorry, girl. Must have drank too much coffee. I'm just all over the place. Online real estate investment platforms. These bring developers and investors together. Investors interested in financial projects through debt or equity receive monthly or quarterly distributions in exchange for taking on the risks and paying a fee to the platform. Investments made on online real estate investment platforms can't be sold as easily as stocks and are often open only to investors who have earned more than $200,000 in each of the last 2 years or have a net worth of at least $1 million. Rental properties. These create additional income by enabling investors to purchase a property that either isn't in their primary residence or is the primary residence in which they rent out rooms. When purchasing a rental property, you need to look for one that has expenses less than your expected rent, and while having a rental property will officially make you a landlord, it's up to you to decide how much work you're willing to do, and if you're not interested in doing the work yourself, consider getting a property manager. House flipping. This may seem easy. You purchase a property, renovate it as inexpensively as possible, and sell it for a profit. But with the rising cost of building materials and higher mortgage interest rates, many people find that this investment strategy is very expensive and eats into their potential profit. An additional risk of flipping is that the longer you hold a property, the less the profit. If you're interested in flipping, consider getting an investment partner to share the cost. It's important to note that real estate investments have high up front costs associated with purchasing physical properties, including down payment, closing costs, and repairs. If you're interested in venturing into real estate investment waters, consider starting with an REIT to gain exposure to the asset class with less money and hassle. Commodities and luxury goods. Commodities include metals, oil, livestock, art, and other vintage, historical, and cultural items that have significant value. The return on the investment will depend on the type of commodity. Oil and livestock generate revenue based on their demand. Metals, art, and other artifacts will continue to appreciate over time, thus increasing their value. For years to come, it's worth noting that some commodity investments will yield a return that you will never see because they may not mature in your lifetime. In other ways, these investments are investments in the general wealth